So you have a new book, While Time Remains. It just came out on February 14th, and it's really dealing with America, where we are, what is going on here. But tell us a little bit about why you wrote this book right now.
I wrote this book is for so many reasons, but basically, I actually have a son in America who is American, and I think I was realizing that freedoms that I thought Americans had, it was like slipping away from all of us. There's no more freedom of speech in the name of saying that hate speech is violence. Therefore, free speech should be abolished, and Americans are fighting against the rights to arm. And I always say, if I had a gun when I was in North Korea, I would not let the authorities take my father like that. Nobody in North Korea would just die if they're gonna come and execute you. So this right seems to me really makes sense, and it's an essential right for individuals to protect their freedom, and especially from their own government. And all these rights, when you think that America respect the diversity of opinions, it turns out only thing they respect was skin color, diversity of skin color.
Yeah, it is interesting to watch the inability to accept other viewpoints, right? We keep seeing this happen again and again. And I know you write in the book about your experience in college, at university, and seeing how people were behaving. But you just brought something up. Obviously, your story, everybody knows it's an incredible story of escaping North Korea, and then also China after that. But let's just talk about North Korea a little bit, because I think a lot of Americans have no idea what it is like other places, right? They complain about things here. What was life like for you as a child growing up in North Korea?
Oh, it was a different planet. I did not even know what internet was. Do not even have 24 hours like electricity. If you look at the like satellite picture of North Korea, it is literally the darkest place on earth. People are still fighting for the basic needs like food and drinking water. And the regime uses starvation as a tool to control the population. And the only thing that we are allowed to believe and learn is about the propaganda that are being taught by the school teachers and by the regime. And the first thing my mom told me as a younger was, don't even whisper, because the birds and mice could hear me. If say you say one wrong thing, it was going to get to 3 to 8 generations of my family to get punished along with me. So I don't think anybody can imagine the idea of not accepting other opinions. The North Korean regime decides what is true, what is not, and nobody is allowed to leave the country. We don't even know the word passport.
Wow. Did you know, and do people know, and maybe this is a complicated question, but when you're living in that sort of brainwashed society and you don't have food and you don't have resources, were people aware of how bad it really was and what the world was like outside of that? Or was it so restricted that people just didn't know that there was a better world out there?
Yeah, I think that's what I always say to American university students. They tell me that how they're oppressed. If you know you're oppressed, you're not really oppressed. For truly oppressed people like North Koreans, they don't even know the word because the regime would not let the word to describe their situation. So we don't have vocabulary like oppression, individual liberty, human rights. All these concepts are like unknown to Northern people. Therefore, we have no clue the words can be like this.
Yeah, and that to me is such an incredible thing to understand. And I know you write about this in While Time Remains, but again about students complaining about their pronouns or acting as though that's the worst type of oppression if somebody misgenders them, or just as an example. And yet here you are describing a situation, I know, where you would see bodies in the street, where you had no food, where there were no resources. And when you come from that world, it must be really shocking to come into a place like America. When you got here, what was and we'll talk more about your backstory, but what was your idea of America before you came here?
When I was in North Korea, I thought Americans were like bastards. That was one word. We were never allowed to say Americans. That's too respectful. It was like one word, American bastards. They told us they are like cold-blooded reptiles who are monsters who would eat our children, rape our women, who would torture us. So that was my idea of America when I was in North Korea. But I was lucky enough to escape to South Korea eventually. And that's when I heard that America was a democracy. This is a country that respects human rights and respects people's religion or faith or thoughts. So that was my idea. I thought this was the home of the brave, the land of liberty. And when I landed, I found a slightly different version of America.
Well, because now there's a fear that, is American culture changing? Are we becoming a country, and I think in some pockets we are, where you can't have another view, where your career will be canceled, where you'll be fired, where you'll lose everything simply because you took a position that the media or Hollywood didn't agree with, right?
Yeah.
That is scary. And so what has it been like for you to have come from where you came from to be here now? And I know this is why you wrote the book. And to sort of look ahead in fear at what might come if this doesn't stop.
There's so many similarity that in my book I described that I saw in North Korea is happening in America. Of course, we are like in the beginning, middle phase of what North Korea could be. I think that one of the tactics that I was realizing is how America uses race to divide people. In North Korea, they use what our ancestors did to divide people. Even though we are same people, same language, same skin color, same genetics, based on what my great-great-grandfather did, they determine if I have oppressor blood or oppressed blood. So if my grandfather was a capitalist or landowner or intelligentsia, that means I'm an oppressor. In America, if your ancestors were white, then you are the oppressor. Then your blood is tainted, your genetics is oppressive. There is forever no redemption in that system. Something called the collective guilt, collective punishment. In America, my son who's half white, and they say he's privileged, he should be guilty. I'm like, his mother was a sex slave. Like his grandmother was sold for $65 in the 21st century. But his skin color is the white, and therefore he can never deserve any compassion or sympathy or even justice. I think so. It's the same tactic that North Korea uses in America. They use the race to divide people, and I think that this is horrifying.
Yeah, that is actually really, really an interesting parallel. I had not heard you speak on that. I had not heard that before, but that is intriguing to me. And you brought something else up about your story that I want to dig into here. We don't have a lot of time, but I want to get into this because it's an important part of your story. Before we get into your time in China and the fact that you're also a sex slave survivor, which is just horrific, and I know you've spoken about that story. How did you get out of North Korea? As you said, you can't leave willingly. So how were you and your mother able to leave?
Traffickers sold me to a sex slave in China. So they helped me to cross the river into China from North Korea.
And so here you are thinking, I would imagine at the time that you're getting help to get out of North Korea, that maybe there's a better life on the other side. What happened to you then once you were in China?
Well, first thing I was seeing my mother being raped, and then they sold me into sex slave, and they sold my mom into sex slave, and I got separated from anybody that I knew.
I don't want to focus too much on those details. I know these things are painful to talk about. But how have you been able, I mean, here you are, you inspire people around the world telling your story. You're able to do that. How were you able to move on from not only the experience, but from the pain and the anguish and the anger that I would imagine for sure came from those experiences?
I think that's what I do not like about American current culture is that they underestimate humans' ability to tolerate pain and be resilient. They really ask me, how are you so functional? How are you so normal? Why do you smile so much? And they somehow expect me to be damaged. They expect me to be bitter. And when I came to America, they were asking me to go therapy. And of course, if you can find comfort in therapy, that's amazing. But the thing is,
sure, I
just thought, what is the point of me surviving all of that? Now I'm going to spend the rest of my life complaining about how hard it was to survive that. So I think having that faith, and I just know I literally crossed the frozen Gobi Desert. If I did that, of course I can live with what I went through. grateful and actually brings me a lot of perspective and gratitude. Actually, I wrote in my first write that there are two things I'm most grateful for. One was that I was born in North Korea, and second was that I escaped. In some sense, if I was not born in North Korea, I don't think I would be this fulfilled and happy and grateful in life.
Yeah, I love the response you just gave. And I know hearing that question, it's probably like, oh my gosh, but hearing if somebody can go through what you went through and persevere, right? There are a lot of other people going through things that are nowhere near as horrific, and they're really struggling. But hearing that you're able to overcome that and push through that. And I love what you said about underestimating human beings and their ability, to heal and move forward. Let me ask you this question, because I know there's a lot of attention that gets placed on the way that religion is handled inside of North Korea, that essentially it's a worship of the state and the government. Did you have any concept of the existence of a God outside of government when you were a child there?
No, we were not. That's the thing. When the communists comes, they first do is killing God, because they become God themselves. So if you own a Bible, you get executed, and your entire family get punished along with you. If you read the Bible, or if you so North Koreans escape to China, and they sometimes meet missionaries. Like me, I was rescued by the Christian missionaries to escape from China. That's a death sentence. They do not allow any other religion, and they only force North to believe in them as gods.
How did your concept of religion and God change over the course of your life here? As you got to America, as you experienced, obviously America has a lot of issues, but America also tends to be a country where there's a lot of faith percolating in a lot of different corners. So how has your experience with that maybe transformed over the years?
So when I was in North Korea, I was kind of atheist, right? I had to just believe in the dictators. And then when I was in China, I was rescued by Christian missionaries. And then it just reminded me of so much about North Korea, unfortunately, because Kim Il-sung copied the Bible and says, he loved us so much, he gave us his son. His son was Kim Jong-il, who dies. His body dies, but his spirit is with us all the time. Therefore, he knows what I think and how much hair I have on my head. Like, it's such a similar theology because they copied the Bible and put their name in it. So afterwards, I just became sick of believing things, right? And then I came to America and I had my son. I think that's when I realized, I couldn't have done that. That was just pure miracle. How he was come out of me like that wonderful human being. And also I said till this day, I don't know, there are only just above 209 North Korean defectors came to America over the last 80 years. What are the chances of me being here and making it this far? I think there has been always a greater, source, something in me or in the universe brought me here that I cannot totally understand. So I am a Christian now, and I pray to understand the word better every day.
Wow, that is powerful. As we round out to a close here, we covered a lot. I mean, I could talk to you for 2 hours about your story because it is absolutely incredible. What are you hoping at the end of the day that readers take away from While Time Remains? What's the big takeaway?
So I think there are two things that I want people to understand. Any country can become like North Korea. That being free is not somehow a condition. Like, I think the fish in the water don't notice the water. Americans born in freedom, they have no idea what freedom can be like without having a freedom. So I really want to teach them what actual oppression looks like, what real tyranny looks like. So we don't fight about so many random things like there is no difference between men and women. That's not a fight. That's a science, right?
Right.
It's like that's their battle. That's their injustice they are fighting against. That somehow men can get pregnant. I'm like, I'm a woman. Like, men cannot get pregnant. It's just, and then also we are showing them the threat that we have. That there's a nation like North Korea, China, dedicated everything they have to destroy America, to destroy democracy. It's a war between tyranny and freedom. And I think we are the new generation that need to refine our country like the founding fathers did. This country is under attack in so many different ways. And this time for us to stand up to defend those values that made America great.
Well, I so appreciate your time. And I agree. I think, allowing emotion to eclipse fact all the time, allowing emotion to be the thing that drives us, that will drive a culture off of a cliff. You can't live that way. Facts have to be the things that drive you. Emotion matters, but it can't be the thing that drives you. I really appreciate your time today. Would love to have you back again sometime soon.
I would love that. Thank you so much.